How are you? It's been
Got
way
it.
too long.
It has, man. It has. Yeah. Thanks for having me on. I got to do this right, though, haven't I? How do you do it?
What do you
You
mean do it
pros.
right?
Like, is this how we record pods these days, John? Like the last couple of I got a
Hey
shirt on
man,
though,
what
right?
however you're comfortable. Yeah, I mean you're looking a little bit formal for my podcast. You might want to remove some
Yeah. So
clothing and, stay
I
horizontal
got
like that.
I got a
Ooh,
beer though.
very
I got a
nice.
ghost ship. It's 5 o'clock here in the UK, John. What do you expect on a Friday?
Yeah, it's only half noon here, and I tend to push the alcohol back to like 6 or 7 o'clock if it happens. I just become I become a complete sack of shit as soon as it's like Will Ferrell in Old School, right? It's like
Once it hits
once
the
it hits your
lips.
lips, like I'm done. So I have to push that off. So I won't be joining you today.
You're Frank the Tank.
Yeah, exactly. And to be perfectly honest, I have to be honest with you. The reason why I was a little late was, see, typically before pods and stuff, I go out for a run or a swim or a workout of some kind, and I come back like a half an hour or an hour beforehand. But as I think I told you, I've been writing a lot more lately, and it's not uncommon when like I'll be out doing a workout or something, and like just some like the muse will just strike, right? And I just sit in front of my computer and my fingers start wagging, and like I can't stop until it stops. And so the reason why I was a little delayed today is because I was in a little bit of a flow thing, and I didn't want to break it.
No problem, brother.
Still there?
No problem. Yep, I'm still
Uh,
here. There was a small crash, but I'm
so
back.
so last I saw you, like I said, I mean, we were just gonna do this privately, but I figured, why the hell not do it publicly? But the last time I saw you was in Miami, and all I seem to be seeing from you on Twitter since then is you gallivanting around doing Bitcoin stuff all over the world, mixing it up with special people all over the place. So I figured maybe getting you on for an update on how Miami and since has been, what that's been like for you.
Yeah. Well, that was the last time and the first time we met, right? Which is
Yeah, I guess
weird.
you're right, which seems weird. Yeah, it seems super weird, but yeah, that's true. Which was great, by
So
the way.
it was amazing. It was amazing. Meeting you and your old man was yeah, it was a special moment. Like that was our first morning breakfast. Well, you guys had already been there a little longer. But we turned up, and yeah, the first thing on the agenda for me was to wake up and have breakfast with JV and his old man, and it was a
I
special
remember.
moment because go ahead.
Sorry, mate. The lag is fucking us up a little bit. I was just gonna say, I remember thinking that morning, like, I wish we could just sit here all day and drink and reminisce. But I think we all had different obligations already. But it was a great breakfast for sure.
Yeah, it was amazing, mate. And when you think how far we've come, we first well, I'd been listening to your show for well, way back in 2019, probably. I found you at the start of 2019 and listening to the rapid fire, and then starting my own show, and you coming on. I think it was around March 2020. Yeah, it was right because lockdown had just all of this mad shit had just started playing out,
I think so.
and then to finally actually meet each other uh, a solid 2 years later after that was very weird, but you've had discussions about this. The plebs that have finally met each other and experienced that. It's a special moment to finally, put a handshake on someone that you've been chatting with for so long and learning so much from as well. So
Mm.
yeah, it was awesome, and yeah, Miami was crazy, man. Like I wasn't supposed to be there. There was some circumstances that led up to me changing my mind on that. I had to acquire certain medical documents. Had to part with Bitcoin to make that happen. just so that we could get into the States, because the pure bloods are still locked out. And I really didn't want to even go down that route and grease that machine, to be honest with you. But the circumstances around that were something, out of ordinary. It included the president of Madeira, and it included Prince Philip of Serbia, who'd just been on the show as well, and being part of conversations that I never thought I would ever be party to. And ever since then, it was clearly the right decision, because a lot of things are happening over here in Euroland, which is exciting. And yeah, happy to answer any of your questions and share anything that I can. So where do you want to steer it?
Well, two things. First, I'm getting a shit ton of feedback, so I don't know if it's your connection or your mic connection or whatever, but just if there's anything to be wiggled, wiggle it. Yeah, I mean, I want to know what you've been up to since, but I think it would be because it was such a whirlwind, of course, and I'd just love to hear what your experience was. As you said, it all came together at the last minute. You came with Philip, and you were part of putting the Madeira president thing together. And I know you had a bunch of interesting experiences in Miami. I'm not sure how many of them you're willing to or wish to share, but I just want to hear what your thoughts were. I know you had a great time, so tell me about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want me to try a different room? Do you think that would help with the
maybe you sound like a robot.
Yeah, let's do that then, mate. God damn it. First world countries and their internet connection. It's it's a real problem.
It's getting worse by the second.
This is excellent live viewing.
It's a good thing we're doing this live.
Yeah, exactly. Man, I've got about 1,000 doors to go through. You're getting a tour of the house here, John.
I'm not sure this is going to be better. I can't hear a thing now.
Oh
it's
my
just gobbledygook.
All right, hang on. I recorded a pod in this location earlier.
Once you get wherever you're going, drop out, come back in, and if it's better, good, and if it's not, we'll just wait till you're back to civilization.
Are you getting anything now? Okay, I'm going to drop out.
Robert. Yo. You back?
Tell me this is better.
You muted?
No, I'm not muted.
Not getting any sound.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Hold on.
This is awful. You getting anything now?
There we go. I got you.
All right. Now I'm getting an echo at your end.
Yeah, it's because fucking AirPods crapped out. You sound better though.
How many podcasts does it take to make an episode?
Yeah, between us, what we've done, like 500 podcasts.
Easily.
All right, where were we? Tell me about Miami.
Yeah. And
There
look,
we go.
if
You
it craps
sound
out
amazing.
again, really? Okay. If it craps out again, we can just boost it and do another time.
Yeah,
Because I'm sure the quality of your high standards of quality, John. This is not good.
So now that I got you, yeah, tell me about Miami because I know there was a ton of cool experiences for you.
Mhm. Okay. Shall I start all over again? Was that before just a complete mess?
You might as well because you might as well.
Okay. All right. Like I was saying, I was not scheduled to go. I did not buy my tickets, flight tickets to get out there until like 2 weeks to the conference starting. The reason being a couple of circumstances arose, which involved the president of Madeira and Prince Philip of Serbia, who had just been on the show, and some high-level conversations and some high-level meetings that were set up and put in place. So I felt that there was no way I could not be part of those conversations. It would be something I would have regretted for the rest of my life if I did not make arrangements to go. So I did have to make some arrangements to go. I had to part with some Bitcoin to upgrade my medical condition so I could be allowed across the US border, which, fun fact, by the way, is still closed to us Euro plebs that have chosen against a certain medical procedure, which still blows my mind that no one's even talking about that anymore. It's just absolutely crazy. But there you go.
Yeah, well.
Managed to get there and got to meet yourself, got to have some incredible conversations, got to see Sailor in full flight. We were graciously invited to attend a breakfast with Michael, with the president of Madeira, his head of cabinet, and the head of the International Business Center on Madeira, along with Prince Philip, myself, and Andre Loja, the pleb in Madeira who has managed to start orange pilling the president himself and other very interesting, notable people within the island. And we arrived at Sailor's beautiful villa. I know you know what it looks like, but for those people that don't, just look on the internet. It's called Villa Vecchia. You see whatever you need to.
Yeah,
That's where we
were. It's a nice spot. Spot.
Exactly. And and Mike just said, "How do you gentlemen want to spend the time this morning?" We had an incredible breakfast, and we explained that the president was considering the adoption, in air quotes, of Bitcoin on the island of Madeira, or more, just wanted more education around the topic. And then Sailor did what Sailor does. He spent the next 45 minutes ramming orange pills down everybody's neck. He opened, I think his opening sentence was, "I will give you my humble opinion on how a nation should adopt Bitcoin, and you can do with that what you want." And then he went, and it was amazing. It was just classic Sailor.
And what is his opinion about how a nation state should adopt Bitcoin, or what was it at the time, at least?
Concentrate on education. Like you don't need to come out and say it's legal tender. You don't need to come out and say, we are adopting. You don't need to, ruffle any EU feathers or anything like that. Just concentrate on getting the message to your people. It's all about education and build infrastructure around that. And that was the message. It's not exactly what the president delivered on stage. I think he did use the word adopting, or I can't remember exactly. Everything was such a blur. You can go back and look for yourself, I suppose, on the videos. But this, since then, this hasn't let up. This is still going forward. There were a bunch of us on the island together at the invitation of the president and his cabinet. And Andre, again, was very instrumental in pulling key people across from all different areas of Bitcoin to bring in different expertise and viewpoints. And we went around meeting all of these different departments. This happened in June, and having very high level meetings. And there's going to be an announcement coming out pretty soon. I can't say too much more. I don't want to steal any thunder, but rest assured, things are being built, and it is being built around education, especially to the local language, Portuguese, which there's only 250,000 inhabitants of Madeira, give or take, but hundreds of millions of people speak Portuguese. So there is there's a huge opportunity here, and a huge opportunity for Madeira to become the Bitcoin hub of Europe, or kind of pull in El Salvador. But strong competition, because look what's going on in the Isle of Man right now with the work Danny Scott and team are doing over at Coin Corner, which is amazing to see. And Gibraltar just last week, there was big news coming out of Gibraltar. Costa Coffee chain there is now accepting Bitcoin in all of their stores, and more merchant adoption is coming on that island as well. And that's under British rule. So it's great. These little satellite islands, like Madeira is a satellite island of Portugal, so it has some autonomy away from the mainland. Like Isle of Man in the UK has a little autonomy. So does Gibraltar. So and Malta, as we know. These are good hunting grounds for any plebs out there listening to this that are in some of these jurisdictions or similar. Go build, go reach out. It's so much easier to have such a big impact in one of these islands with small populations.
Yeah, and way fewer headwinds too, obviously. But I think I told you this about the president of Madeira, but I introduced Samson when Samson introduced president of Madeira. I think an American dude from Prospera, I believe, like a representative from Prospera, and Indira, the senator from Mexico. I can't remember her full name. And so I guess when Samson or she was out on stage delivering their remarks, the president of Madeira, after the president and the Prospera guy had already spoken, we're all there just to the side of the stage, behind the invisible from the audience. And the president of Madeira was there telling the Prospero guy like how to stand, and like he was like, you gotta don't move around, just plant your feet and bring up all your energy from here. And he was like rubbing his like groin area, right? He was like, right here, you gotta just like ground yourself and bring up all the energy, and this is where you speak from. That's how you deliver like a confident speech. You don't want to be moving around, you don't want to be flailing your arms and all that kind of shit. And I was standing like right next to them. I thought it was hilarious. But yeah, it was I think, to be honest, like everyone at the conference was expecting bigger announcements, and maybe there had been some plan, but things change, and maybe they had to come up with a slew of smaller announcements to make up for the lack of a bigger announcement. But what was it like in Madeira, when you went to visit and speak with everybody? Is it nice? Like, was it a place you could spend some time?
Yeah, it's a beautiful place. I urge anybody to go and check it out. But more importantly, the level of the questions from the people that we were meeting were very much on point. These weren't very importantly, we were welcomed, like wholly welcomed. There was not a cold meeting at all. Sometimes it can be a little bit weird. People don't want to listen to these crazy fucking psychopaths talking about magic internet money. This was not the case. This was not the case at all. And I guess you know, a lot of that would be due to the fact that the president, you know, put in the work, and he went to Miami, and he has started learning about it. And he started reading some of the books, and he's met some of the authors, and this is clearly an agenda of his that he wants to push. So, you know, it's bringing everybody else into line with him, I suppose. And having the opportunity to sit in those meetings and participate in those meetings was yeah, it was pretty cool. You know, we met the finance minister, for example, and swag bombed him a load of books in Portuguese, which Nico from Consensus Network and Andre himself runs Monstera Books, and between them, they're just trying to translate as much Bitcoin content into Portuguese as possible. So he was getting books he was getting Jeff's book signed, he was getting Safe's books, he was getting Layered Money. You know, it was amazing. It's like, right, go do your homework, and if you've got any questions, you can email any single one of us here. And these were the kind of conversations that were happening. It was very, very bullish. It was an incredible 4 or 5 days. And
do you think they'll avoid the shitcoinery?
Yeah, we have a plan for that.
Right.
So yeah, that's well, yeah, that'll be announced. But yeah, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. They have so far. There are some crypto-related companies on the island which needs a little bit more due diligence going into them. Apparently, they offer storage solutions for digital assets, but they'll be picked apart, and we'll be able to raise the red flag if we see any you know, dodgy goings on. Let's put it that way.
Right. Was the what was the president's reaction to that orange pilling by Saylor? Like, was he just sat back, taking it all in? Did he have, you know, questions that needed answering? Like, we can all appreciate what it's like when Saylor gets on a rant, of course, but like, was the president engaged or informed enough to actually have some follow-up?
Very, very early days in their journey. Like, you know, they just got off the plane from Madeira. They had no idea what they were walking into, really, and then they were just bombarded with you know, all of the information, not just from Saylor, but the next night we were at dinner with Max and Stacy and Samson, and Tour was there as well. You know, a great table, and Max just went on he maxed them. Not only did they get Saylored, but they got maxed as well. So at that point, it was just like, you know, being caught in a kind of hairdryer, you know, just a information coming straight at you. But the questions they had were, you know, they were open. They were all around, you know, how do we learn more? How do we reach they call them diaspora. That means the expatriates of Madeira.
Mm-hmm.
There's a huge population of people that were born in Madeira but live away in different other countries. You know, how do we do that? How do we bring this all together? So man, yeah, it was amazing. It was truly amazing.
Did Max opine on what you mentioned regarding, you know, the differing opinions which Saylor expressed his about the way to go about introducing Bitcoin to a country? You know, but I'm sure there's maybe several nuances, but basically either declare a legal tender, make a big splash about it, plant the flag of Bitcoin, and attract all of the good and bad attention as a result of doing so. And of course, you have to, you know, there's perhaps like an ethical implication there. Like, do you want Bitcoin to be a top-down or bottom-up sort of phenomenon? Or just deregulate, allow it to be used as any other currency, and don't make much of a stink or fuss about it, and just let the market and people's preferences and behaviors dictate how it unfolds.
No, his was more personal, more like, this is why you need Bitcoin. And right. You know, even answering questions around the mining process and things of that nature. Yeah, I don't remember him. He's given too much of an opinion on.
What do you think about that?
I think there's a lot of buzzwords in there, right? I mean, like what, announce legal tender. I mean, do we need anybody to tell us what we can or can't use as a medium of exchange? Isn't that the whole point of Bitcoin in the first place? No
Yeah.
one needs to tell me that, yeah, okay, Dan, it's now legal for you to use Bitcoin. It's like, well, fuck it. I've been using it for ages. So, um, yeah, I think having been a party to these meetings, I do think education is the best approach. If you can get the people on board in such a fashion that they understand how it can help them, how it can help their businesses, how it can help their families, how it can save their wealth. There's so much here to learn, but it has to start there. It has to start with education. And if you've got somebody such as the president of the nation or the president of an island or a semi-autonomous zone that is willing to push that and to back that and to even fund that to a certain degree, then you've really got to start running with it. And I just hope this is the first of many others that might want to watch this, learn from this, and see what happens from it. Because I mean, you and I know the power of this thing. It's very, very difficult to get that across in the first 20 minutes of meeting anybody. And
Yeah.
as long as it's a sustained effort, like 1 or 2 years of showing up with the same message, with the same concern, and with integrity, you will earn the trust of people, and they will go out and start doing their own research. I think that's the best approach.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think that was one of the big criticisms of how El Salvador went about things. I mean, you could, a lot of people were critical of the, part of how they went about it in terms of forcing businesses to accept Bitcoin, of course. And those are valid criticisms as far as I'm concerned. But there was also so little education around what they were doing. They just dropped it on everyone. And like, I think there was basically none, which I think is part of the reason why after like an initial boost, things maybe have not stalled out, but they certainly haven't taken hold maybe as strongly as people were expecting. And because there's a lot to unpack here, and especially people that don't have the luxury of just having a variety of different assets in their investment portfolio, like people that are literally using money as money on a daily basis, and save a little, spend the majority of it, and it's kind of life or death. They need to have a high degree of confidence in what they're doing and what they're engaging in, and why this option might be appealing to them. And it just seemed like none of that was there. So I think other jurisdictions are probably going to learn from that example and focus on education, and not so much just, and I know we were all super excited about it, but pushing something through really quickly with very little context. And hopefully things still go well there, but as is always the case, education is what's required for you to make your own decisions about what is best for you and how to engage a variety of things. And so it's good to hear that that's the course that the guys in Madeira are taking.
Well, you watch and learn, right? I think we're all of the agreement that what El Salvador did was huge. The announcement, obviously, at Bitcoin 2021 was massive. Bukele then following that up with his own, what did he do? He was beamed down from a spaceship or something in El Salvador. The real cringy stuff, naive. But that was headline grabbing stuff, right? Whether that was the intent, that was the approach, who knows? We weren't party to those conversations. I can only talk about the conversations I have been party to, and that none of those gimmicks have come up. Let's put it that way. It's a very, very it's a much more structured approach. And I tweeted earlier, if you think you've stacked enough Bitcoin, think back to why you started and how far you've come since then. And, just think about like just us 2 years ago. Go back and listen to our first rip on my pod with different people, mate, with different people. And at that point, we'd already been down the rabbit hole a pretty long time, right? March 2020. And here we are, July 2022. It does not stop changing you. It's almost like it goes cell by cell, throughout your body. It's or synapse by synapse. I don't know. You've delved into this way more than I have. We've all felt the change. This isn't woo-woo shit anymore. This is incredible what's happening to so many of us. So take it 1 year at a time. Madeira will look like a completely different place in a year's time, and then a year after that, and then a year after that, and hopefully other jurisdictions will be dragged along in the wake.
Yeah, hopefully. And with the Bitcoin City announcement and stuff, I mean, of course, centrally planning a city, to the extent that's what is in fact planned, and maybe it's not, maybe it's maybe they don't intend to be that involved or whatever, and all the hoopla around it. Like, of course, on one level it's cringe, but on the other hand, you're like, it's great to see someone who's so unabashedly like all in, balls to the wall in Bitcoin, right? Like, fuck the IMF and the World Bank and the US government and all the haters, and let's just be as absurd as possible. I mean, there's something very Bitcoin about that, right? About just being off the wall ridiculous about how much you're into this and you want this to succeed. So even though I might have my gripes with the way they went about things, I still appreciate the pizzazz, let's say.
Everything's good for Bitcoin, mate. We know that.
Yeah.
We know that.
I think speaking of like, doing pods a while ago, didn't we do one, you and I? Not Tim.
Hey, Tim.
You and I and Larry White and maybe some other people. Did we do that like in 2020 as well?
It was you, me, Kayvan, and was that his name? Lawrence White, Larry White?
Yeah.
The gold dude.
Yeah, from the Cato Institute.
So somewhere like that.
Yeah.
That was the back end of 20, I think, that we did that.
Right. That seems like so long ago, to your point.
Yeah.
What do you think about where we're at today in the world? I mean, I want to hear more about your stories about where you've been and what you've been up to, but we're in interesting times on a number of different levels. So
well,
what's your take on the world?
We're in Clown World 4.0, aren't we? Like,
man,
this is Clown World at plaid speed. It's just freaking retarded out there. It's absolutely like, it's like you peek through the curtain at Normieland and you're like, holy fuck, what's going on out there? Like, this is ridiculous. It's absolutely unreal, mate. We're dealing with our own personal shit. We've been through the mill of Clown World for the last 4 months or so. The authorities in France, where we live, the homeschooling Nazi police have been clamping down on homeschooling across France. Yeah, because
is it illegal?
Not yet, but they want to make it illegal. Nation state's gonna nation state, right? This is and that's a huge red flag. A huge red flag when you take away a family's choice over how to educate their own children. Right now, the way it's set up is you have to wade through a shit ton of bureaucracy and administration, but you can get it done if you stick it out and you stay the path.
Get what done?
Homeschool your kids, take them out of the state education system.
But you need permission to not enroll them in the state education system.
Yep.
Holy fuck.
Yep. It's
so
not
you just can't have kids and educate them how you want. I'm obviously super naive here, but I mean, that would seem like to me a pretty foundational option to have as an individual. Like, I want to educate my own kids.
You'd think so, right? It's illegal in many countries, in Europe especially, including Sweden, Holland, like randomly enough, Germany. Fun fact that Hitler and Goebbels, when they come to full power in 1938, the Nazi Party come to power in 33, but the military was still the military. They had their own thing going on, right? Until in 38, they set up the head of the military, some huge scandal. He had to resign. He was off. So the military come under full control of the Nazi Party. So the Nazi Party by that point had full control over Germany. The first bill that Hitler and Goebbels put through was to make homeschooling illegal. And up until that point, it had been very prevalent amongst the middle to upper middle classes, and perhaps even some of the more elite families to homeschool their children. No, bam. Ask yourself why, and this has never been repealed in Germany, and it's still the freaking case that it is absolutely illegal. You have to send your children to state education. And it's not public education. I want to make that absolutely clear. Like, that's a nice little meme just to paper over the fact that it's state education. And, free education as a human right is another nice little meme that they use. So in France now, they're really trying to clamp down on it, and they've told us that one of our kids is not being accepted to be homeschooled. So we're going through that. We're fighting that, and just so happens, same daughter. We applied for. She needed a new passport, right? A new slave travel document. So that she's allowed to travel outside of, lines in the sand. So we sent that thing off beginning of May, because we needed to be in the UK for July for a big family gathering here, the whole side of my family, and still no document came through. And you just can't get through to these people, mate, to speak to someone, because it's just department kicks you to another department, to another department, and then you just can't speak to anyone. It's just a joke, and everyone's
nobody's responsible for anything. So you can't.
No, of course,
nobody can be held accountable for anything.
Classic clown world layering to keep you, in your place. So in the end, Sophia and I put her in the car. We were supposed to be flying. Claire and the other kids flew. I put Sophia in the car and I drove the 11 hours to the border, where I had an expired passport and my own passport, and explained the situation to the border crossing, the French border crossing, and then the British. And they let us through. They let us through into England, and we are now here. We can't get back because we don't have French passports. She does not have a French passport. And today I've been on the phone again, and I've been contacting MPs. I've been contacting the consulate, the embassies.
Oh my God.
It's a clusterfuck. They've had this thing for over 3 months, right? And I was told today it's at the examination stage of the process. Like, okay, explain that to me. What does that mean? Well, it just means that one of our examiners has to examine it before they post it to you. I'm like, oh my God. Like, this is what we're dealing with out here in clown world. It's just a joke.
I mean, we've all encountered this in some form in our life, I'm sure, but like the size of the bureaucracy, the lack of responsibility by any individual person in it, the complete and utter ineptitude, the upside down incentives to get anything done on any sort of timeline. Like, literally everything is such that you're going to have the worst experience possible on the longest timeline possible at the greatest expense possible, and it's just the inefficiencies and the cost and all the unnecessary waste of time and energy and other resources as a result of this. I mean, of course you want to pull your hair out or scream or, burn the whole thing down because it's so ridiculous. But to, the point you mentioned about education, first of all, it's just still so crazy to me that if you just want to educate your own family, in many places you're not allowed, or at the very least you have to jump through a bunch of hoops before you do it. I mean, it's just completely insane. But also, you mentioned, like, some people think education is a human right, and I've spoken with some politicians in the last few months. I was at the Oslo Freedom Forum in Norway, and you run into a lot of those sorts of people there. But the point is what is education? Education
Exactly.
is as subjective and context dependent as value. So when you say like, well, out of the compassion of my heart and the empathy and a desire to minimize inequality and all that kind of stuff, my position as an activist or as a government official or whatever is to, education, has to be a part of what we provide our constituents. And that's, part of our platform. It's like, well, first of all, even if you let's forget the agenda aspect of education, right? Let's just assume that's not a part of it. Let's just assume an altruistic attempt to formulate an education. The education you give to a city dweller in London or a city dweller in Bogota should be very different than the education you give to someone who lives in a jungle community of 10,000 people, or even, some small rural farming village in the UK or something like that. Like the skills they need, the understandings they need to extract value from their environment and produce value to their environment and to the other people within that environment are in many cases dramatically different. And so you standardizing what quote unquote education means, and then thinking you're doing people a service by just dropping it on the same thing on people in all sorts of different situations, again, it's just creating more inefficiencies. It's inhibiting the ability for those people to learn the knowledge, to acquire the knowledge and learn the skills that allow them to optimally engage with their environment, social and natural, in order to create value and ameliorate their situation. You're inhibiting that by just dumping a standardized education on them, dumping the costs associated with it on them and other people. I mean, you're hamstringing them. You're keeping them in a unequal situation where they cannot improve their environment and ostensibly get to a place that you're trying to help them get to by providing this quote unquote free education. And so many people fail to see that. It's like, education is one thing and medical care is one thing. And, that's part of the conceit of even well-meaning people all around the world, be it politicians or otherwise, that the conceit is that they're defining all of these things as a unitary thing. And they're presuming the authority or the right or failing to appreciate the bias in defining those things as something singular, right? That's not actually subjective in most cases. And that as a result needs to be defined by each individual in each one of those environments in relation to that environment. But no, let's formulate an education, same for everybody. Let's inject our biases and prejudices and agenda into it and just fucking drop it on people and expect a thank you in return for the service that we're doing, everyone.
Absolutely. All right. If anybody wants to delve into this, very quick read or very quick listen is Dumbing Us Down by John Taylor Gatto. And you've just basically nailed it. That is what the education system has been designed to do. Dumb you down by getting everybody into this frenzied state of learning the exact same shit, competing against each other, and in SAT scores or whatever else you call them, whatever acronym it is in your country, but just keeping people basically non-productive, non-creative. Sir Ken Robinson talked about this in his TED Talk, still the most ever watched TED Talk. Do schools kill creativity? 100% they do. And there is a reason for that. And there is a reason, Gatto goes into this in his book, The Secret History of the American Education System. The likes of Ford and Rockefeller and Carnegie and one other escapes me right now. Can't remember. Really aggressively funding the education system in the early late 1700s, late 1800s, early 1900s, to get everybody into school, to get everybody learning the same thing, to get everybody completely freaking confused. Why are we teaching 13-year-old kids calculus? fuck me. Like that. There's a reason, and it is to confuse people and to make people feel as though they're worthless and that they're dumb, and that way, by virtue of that, you create an easily led, malleable, easily manipulative. That's not the word, is it? I'm looking for manipulable society.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly the extremely cynical view of it all, right? Like I tend to think that it's more of a mix, like all these outcomes that you may have been right in identifying. I think I most often attribute things to incompetence rather than malice, is what I often say. And of course, like I'm not naive enough to think that there's no agenda.
There's malice in this one.
Sure, fair enough.
I've been down this rabbit hole. I'm telling you.
But even if there weren't, I mean, this is kind of the point. Let's say you're in London, you're in Paris, you're in New York, you're in DC, and these national standardized education curriculums are being devised, and that they're, like in let's say you then put them on an entirely different environment, and the image that's coming to my mind now is like, schools and education being funded in places like rural places in Africa or Latin America or something like that.
Yeah.
And, people might look at that and be like, yeah. And people might look at that and be like, wow, that's great. Like kids getting an education. But aside from what I mentioned before, where the education is not suited for the environment they're in, it also, like, where was that education developed? Well, it was developed in an entirely different environment and circumstance. And so what that education is going to do is going to pull those people toward the circumstance where it's more relevant. Now, of course, we're still going to be super critical of the contents of that curriculum and education, but suffice it to say that it's more relevant for the modern developed world than it might be for that particular environment. And so what you're going to end up doing, at least directionally, if not absolutely, is you're going to be increasing the relevance of this other environment to those people getting that education, and you're going to suck them out of one environment toward another environment, and you're not doing anything to fix the issues that you supposedly are attempting to fix via this education, because the education is minimally relevant to that environment and more so relevant to this one. So you get this, call it a brain drain. You get these people, if they're able to extricate themselves from that environment, doing so rather than equipping them with the requisite knowledge and skills to transform the environment that they're in into something that's better, and importantly, allowing them to determine what skills and knowledge are required to transform it in a way that they deem most valuable or beneficial or desired.
Then you're creating sovereign individuals, John. We can't have that. we like, let's use the perfect meme of the poor African kid that, just if he could get that education, that little start in life, the same as a US or Canadian student, whatever you want to use. Like, what? Okay, let's get that kid in the classroom. Okay, what does he need to know? Second World War history? Or does he need to know how to run an irrigation system, or a hydro-powered irrigation system, or wind-powered irrigation system for his community and his father's farm? Like, right, we know the answer, but all these fuckers want to do is get him in a classroom and teach him numbers, figures, and agenda, not curriculum, from the developed Western world to lift him up out of the poverty, and we're just being gaslit. It's really, and Bitcoin fixes this, obviously, because if that kid had Bitcoin, he has the power to save and the power of choice, that.
And if everyone saved and used Bitcoin, then the government would be starved of the resources to impose these education systems on everyone that they see fit to do so. And the other thing is, as a student in these places, you may not even recognize this consciously, but certainly subconsciously, you go into class every day, you're getting an education, you're being tested on and judged on your ability to, regurgitate or otherwise learn this information. And then you go out in your day-to-day life, and there's this huge gap between what you're learning and what your environment is what you're confronting in your environment. And I think, among other things, that serves to disengage people from one or the other, either from their environment or from their education, because they say, like, the education is not relevant to my environment. You good? Or yeah, like it just creates this gap between the two. And what you want is to maximize engagement by having your education be most compatible with your environment, so that you can engage that environment to create value and find meaning and pursue actualization and all this kind of stuff. But when you have this disparity because the education was developed or imposed in a way that's ignoring the realities of the environment in which the person who's receiving the education must contend with, then I think you get disengagement. You get people checking out because it's like this, it just seems irrelevant. And that's not, you're not going to get optimal outcomes or results when you put people in a situation where you almost, if not force, where you incentivize or you foster their disengagement from the things that are able to improve their position in life. It's completely the opposite of what you want to be doing. And this is the part that, those high and mighty people that want to bring education to everyone in the world and think it's such a good thing fail to recognize.
Of course they do, because they've been brainwashed themselves. And, a lot of people listening, oh, I haven't been brainwashed. Well, we all have. We've all been programmed, every single one of us. And the state education system has been a huge part of that. Likely most people listening to this have gone through it themselves. They carry their own traumas from that. I mean, it's minimum 15 years, right? It's so aggressive if you think about it. Like, it was the age of 5 for me. I now know it's a lot younger in other countries. In France, like, compulsory schooling starts from the age of 3. That's ripping a 3-year-old away from the family unit. This is an attack on the family. This is what we talk about in Bitcoin all the time, right? Then that child is being brought up under somebody else. This is 15 years minimum of their life in this institution at their most malleable time of their lives, as their most formative years. Think where we could be as a society. How many times were you told to stop looking out the window when you were sitting in a class you were just completely disengaged with? I mean, what would you have rather been doing that day? And it could be something, in the UK, for example, most 11 to 15, 17-year-old boys just wanted to be playing football all day long. In Canada, maybe it was hockey. In the US, maybe it was, whatever. Sport of choice, doesn't matter. Or others might have been wanting to play their musical instruments that they just were infatuated by, whether it was the piano or the drums, but they couldn't, because for 8 to 9 hours a day, they had to be locked away in these rooms. What about those kids that just wanted to lay down and watch the clouds go by and philosophize over life? Why are we here? What about the writers, the poets? All of this gone, shattered, not allowed. It's sick. Completely sick. And now on top of that, you layer on like this 4 years of university. Like, look where that's got us nowadays with this whole freaking oh my god, like, what is going on? Like, again, glimpse into normie world, and you don't know whether it's now LGBT plus QR squared, but now we can't, because of monkeypox, and that's all the gays' faults. We've got to drop the G in the LBT. Like, stay away, mate. This is going on. This is being pushed through the universities, and now that's going to start trickling all down. These agendas are, they're disgusting. It boggles my mind where society could be if there had not been that intervention in so many children's lives. But of course, the counter argument is, oh yeah, but Dan, what about all the kids that get abused by their? It's like, oh man, yeah, of course, right, okay, so let's lock them all up in a classroom then. Let's blanket lock everybody up in a classroom.
Yeah, I mean, a multifaceted problem, of course, right? Because as you said, I mean, if you erect a system that increasingly diminishes the importance and the role of the family in favor of the importance and role of the state, then you're going to create you're going to exacerbate a lot of these pre-existing problems. And then if you deprive people artificially by stealing their wealth, either through taxation or inflation, then you do so even more. And you also enable the state to, presume to play an even greater role. And then, as we were saying before, when you dictate what an education should be, rather than allowing an education to be determined based on the context of the environment and the capacity and the proclivities of the individual, then you create that separation, that disengagement, the space between what ought to be the education, what is. And of course, you get all of these problems that we're seeing in society today. Now, part of the reason that we're so incredibly bullish on Bitcoin is because we do see the relationship between all these things, or at least some of them, and how much better it could be. How much better is education going to be in 50 years or 100 years or 150 years than what it is today and what we experience? I mean, we've talked about this before offline. Like, I have a running list for the last 10 years of all these different curriculum items that I'd love to see on an ideal K-12 education. And, it's so, I just do it for fun because I'm like, oh man, how cool would it be to, when you're 8 years old, have this be a part of your curriculum and your education and all that kind of stuff. And so I think, should Bitcoin succeed in a world that is predicated on that, there's going to be a renaissance of so many things, and education is going to be one of them. That being said, I mean, if I try to be as sympathetic as I can to the state of affairs, I mean, I can appreciate that it's difficult to determine what education should be, because wrapped up in that is a determination of what is it that we should be striving towards. What is the thing that's most valuable that we should be attempting to actualize ourselves in order to achieve or become? And that's a really difficult question to answer by every individual. And of course, it's the further out you get from the individual, the more difficult it is to answer. It's even difficult for a parent to determine for a child what the relevant education should be, even more so for a community to determine for the community members. And of course, even more, absurdly difficult for a nation state to determine for each individual child what their education should be, what they should be striving for, because how is that determined? And we wind up in the realm of religious and theological and philosophical discourse when we ask the question like, well, what should we be striving for? What's the thing of greatest value that we're trying to extract from our environment, or provide to our environment, or become? And so I can appreciate that is a very difficult task, and that part of education, learning anything, is figuring out which contours to place on the process, right? What limitations to place in there so that you can help foster the appropriate education. And I think that's a very difficult task. And of course, like I said, I'm very critical of the state presuming to assume that mantle and provide those answers. But even as and I'd love to get your insight on this because you've done it. One of the things that intimidates me is when I become a parent, I'm for sure not going to be living in a place that doesn't allow me to choose the education for my kids. But I'm also intimidated by the prospect of me being a big part of that education, not just the time and energy considerations, which are probably substantial, but also just I'm an imperfect person. I have my own bullshit. I have my own biases and prejudices. How do I not impose that on them? And how do I, nudge them in the right direction? And how do I pick up on the nuances of what they're interested in, what not? And how do I give them enough looks so that they can get a variety of exposure to things and figure out what they gravitate to the most? You know what I mean? So, I mean, the floor is yours, your experience.
There's no answer to that. There's it comes back to human action, right? If you take it all the way back, and this idea that man will act, and having trust in the fact that the child will find a way to educate themselves to a certain degree. But then when you see that little glimmer of interest in them, whatever topic that might be, that's when you get in the way and you put the tools in front of them that they can use to explore that particular subject. And that could be anything. That could be sport, that could be music, that could be reading, that could be writing, that could be art. we've had all of these, and just simple acts like going out and buying like a nice sketchbook, and some decent pencils, like professional pencils, and just like having that, like, you like drawing, you like anime, you like making the cartoons. I bought you this today. Or buying it, picking up a secondhand guitar on eBay, like any of these things, like, and then you take it one step further. If that interest holds, then you find maybe a mentor or a tutor, or you find some online courses, or you find a community college. This is big in the US, or you find actual in-person classes and you sign them up. It's not all on you. What is on you is to parent and to care and to love for the kid, and that all comes naturally. That gets beaten out of parents so damn quickly, because like you have this attack of parenting books. Like, as a new, I remember this as a new parent, as we you're like, okay, shit, we got this little thing coming soon. Like the little person's gonna turn up here. Like, how do we do this right? How do we not make mistakes? How do we get the thumbs up from the community around us? How do we make our parents proud? How do we make our brothers and sisters proud? How do we make them the best that they're ever going to be? And
I'm
the
going to need
easiest route.
full answers to all those questions, FYI. At some point, I'll be hitting you up.
Well, the thing is, this is what happens to us when you go through the state education system. You believe the answer is in the book, or if it's not in the book, it's at least in the back of the book, right? And this is why we don't have problem solvers anymore in any part of society. Like today, dealing with this freaking passport office lady, she was trying her best. She had to put me on hold while she looked up the article in her handbook of who and where to send me on the next stage of so that is her life. It's look, there's an answer in the book, just follow the rules. She's comfortable with that because that's what she was taught at school from the age of 5. Here's a book. That's what happened. Remember it. And if you don't know it, the answer's in the back of the book. So when you become
talk about disengaging. Sorry to interrupt, but just talk about like the starting from when you're 5 years old and still being the case when you're 50 in that office. Like, how engaged are you going to be in life? How much are you going to care about life? How exuberant are you going to be about it? How much of the energy and joy are you going to access when you go to work every single day after an hour commute each way, and and your whole life is, hi, let me check, open book, pass along. And like, that's the extent of what is being asked of you and from you, and what's even available to you, even if it was by your own volition, to do with your time, with the gift that you have of being alive, basically. So of course people are going to eject, disengage, follow different abusive habits, be they substances or ideas or behaviors or what have you. I mean, of course, right? And this is part of the thing that plagues society today, is you put that many people in these mindless, meaningless roles, then they're going to engage in behaviors to cover up that sense of meaninglessness, because who wants to confront that degree of lack of meaning?
No. So you get people that just wind up getting home tired, disengaged, bored, falling into their dip in the sofa, calling Uber Eats, and slamming on Netflix, right? Rinse and repeat. And this is what we have. This is society. And it gets formed in the state education system. It's by design, and there is malice, a huge amount of it. And yeah, again, John Taylor Gatto, go read his work. This guy was a teacher for 30 years himself, and he won New York State Teacher of the Year 3 years in a row or something. Then he quit because he suddenly figured it all out, and he went down the rabbit hole of the amount of like eugenics wrapped up in the education system is really disgusting. Like this is causing societal classes from a very early age, and labeling people from a very early age, and trying to make sure that the more intelligent are placed together, so they're more likely to breed with each other, and the less intelligent are just how do we just expel them and make them feel, worthless? It's all there. All of that information is there. And when you actually look at it objectively, you're like, oh shit, yeah. So that was why we were set 1 through 5 in maths, English, and science. The STEM, like those really important shame weighing. If you're no good at math, you're nothing, right? You're no one. You're nowhere. But if you're good at math and you're top set, like, yeah, you're amazing. This is, you're going to go
Dude,
places. You're going to be an engineer. You're going to be a PhD scientist.
I remember being so distraught I remember crying my eyes out when I first encountered negative numbers, because I remember sitting at the dining table with my dad, and like he was trying to explain them. And I was just like, but how do you have less than nothing? It's not possible. Right. Like, and I just, I couldn't understand it. And then math was never, I was good up until, as you said, like high school. And then it started getting, too weird for me. And it is frustrating. And this is this is one of the problems, is that education is meant to empower you to further pursue the things that are most meaningful to you. And as a result of that, it should be something that you enjoy tremendously, because every step you take on that journey is feeding you literally via getting you closer to that thing that causes meaning to well up inside of you. And I think a lot of Bitcoiners, for what it's worth, are feeling this these days, because Bitcoin has ignited, for a variety of reasons, but let's just say it has ignited this thing that's causing people to reassess and reconstruct and reapproach a variety of topics in order to understand Bitcoin better, in order to understand the implications better, in order to reconstruct a perspective that's not so tethered in, the former fiat land, the matrix, whatever you want to call it. And that they're doing that and enjoying it, because it's relevant now. They can see the line between the thing that they're trying to become or pursue and the education that they're engaging in. And so it's so enjoyable as a result. But when you're just force-fed this stuff and you have no idea why you're learning it, and it's not related to what you think is most meaningful and what you most want to achieve and become, when you can't see that line, then it's just aggravating, it's dull, it's painful. And that's been the experience of education for so many of us. And that's what
was the one subject that you just hated going to? Like, you just sat there, looked out the window, you're like,
physics.
Now what do you think about physics?
Love it. I'm studying it more than ever.
Right, but Bitcoin did that to you, right? It's
it really did.
What's this guy talking about the first law of thermodynamics? What the fuck does that even mean? I don't know.
Yeah, it's all just complicated math and numbers and weird symbols, and like, this is stupid. But when you actually start trying to gain an understanding of the world and how it all works, and you look out and you think, well, of course, this makes sense if you account for this and this and this and this and this. And then you're like, oh, there's been, a lot of people have come before me and have really put some time into this. And maybe I should, if I want to know more about it, I can consult their work. And once it has the proper framing, once it's has the proper relevance to an understanding that you're attempting to gain, then it's effortless. It's not, so it's not something that requires willpower from you.
One more question for you. Did you have religious studies, religious education, anything like that in your secondary school? Nothing at all.
No, very secular education all the way down for me.
Right. Okay. So,
but that wasn't the case for like, I went to private school from grade 2 onwards, but all the local public schools in the city I was from, I think all of them, if not most of them, were like religious denomination schools, and it was a big deal when that started to unwind and kids from different denominations started being forced to go to the same school, and parents were up in arms and all that kind of stuff.
Right. I mean, the reason I asked is because, that they were the lessons that we had to sit through, and I would just be like, the fuck am I doing here? Like, and I'd just end up looking out the window, and I just wondered whether you'd ever had the same, because now you're writing like 80,000 word essays on religion and shit. You couldn't have pulled that off in the past because you'd have been forced to do it. This is the difference. It's forced education and it's forced association. You do not choose who you are interacting with. You're put there, and you do not choose what you are learning. You're force-fed it. So of course there's going to be disengagement. It's such nonsense when you like look at it objectively. There's zero choice. There is absolutely no sovereignty over that at all. Maybe you get a little bit of choice when it comes to like we have GCSEs in the UK. You've got to choose like 4 subjects or 5 subjects because 3 or 4 are mandatory. I don't know how it works anymore, but otherwise there's no choice. You know, it's nonsense. It's everything that Bitcoin isn't.
Yeah, and once you get that disengagement, especially in the kind of chaotic mind of a young person, it goes off in all sorts of unproductive, oftentimes, directions, you know, because it's not channeled properly. That's the point about these limitations, these parameters. You need them. It's just a way of how you determine what they are toward the most productive ends. And by productive, I mean, like, should it not be the case that you pursue knowledge and education to achieve a form of excellence in relation to the thing that you believe to be most meaningful? And if you can marry the two, maybe you end up creating valuable or beautiful works and become a valuable or beautiful person. But if you don't do that, if those aren't channeled in the proper way, I think that chaos escapes. Basically, it's that energy is not channeled, and you get, you know, we've all heard the stories in schools today, like, you know, what percentage of kids are drugged up so that they are tame or whatever in school, and they're being fed garbage, they're being educated stuff that's irrelevant and uninteresting to them. They're responding in a totally expected way, which is, you know, to not be engaged and to not be paying attention. Then they're being diagnosed for that as saying, oh, there's something wrong with you. It's not wrong with the system. It's not wrong with the food. It's not the teachers. It's not that anything else is wrong. It's you have some fucking chemical imbalance. So chew on these drugs so that you're docile and, you know, and you just sit there and you don't do anything. And so you'll take the education we give you. And we're expecting them to turn into happy, well-adjusted people pursuing meaningful lives. No, they end up being problems to themselves and them family and otherwise. And to the point that you made about parents earlier, again, I mean, you can sympathize, right? Because if you're a parent who doesn't know how to bring up a human being or educate a human being, then how enticing is it to be like, oh, well, the whole social order is there to say, just give them to these people. They know what they're doing. They know how to educate them. And, you know, well, you have a busy life and you have to work because, you know, more people are deprived as ever as the state, you know, and theft is such a dominant component of people's lives. So people have to work more than ever. I don't have the time, even if I had the inclination or the confidence. So sure, like, you guys are the pros, you do it. And there you go. Another responsibility shrugged off. And what are the detrimental effects of that? Well, we see them everywhere in society today.
Mass psychosis. You know, it's sick. And you know, this handing them over to the professionals as well, right? You know, I don't want to rag on teachers, but there is a certain personality type who is a true mentor. You know, like, maybe we've been lucky enough to, right? Maybe you're lucky enough to meet one or two,
like, of all time. Pretty much.
Right. These people, they get shaken out of the education system quicker than the kids. They're not welcome in the education system. We cannot have true mentors in it. So what do we end up with? We end up with, and I'm probably going to get a lot of hate from a lot of teachers. How dare you? But most of them paint themselves into a corner. They start off as teachers' assistants, or they'll go through like 4 years and get like a teaching degree or something. You can't teach mentorship. You just can't. But what you can teach is an applied set of rules that is expected from you in a classroom situation, and how to safeguard and how to, you know, tick boxes and all those kinds. You just become a state drone with a paycheck and a really cushy pension hanging over your head. So just stick around for 40 years and you'll be golden. And it's nonsense, mate. The whole thing is rotten to the core. Yeah, it really is.
Well, that's the thing, you know, like, maybe the answer is, maybe homeschooling is just a dramatic response to just how horrible the system of education has become. Like, it's probably going to be the case in the future that's homeschooling is not the most efficient or even the most optimized way to deliver education. But as you mentioned, like some teachers are just, crazy people, right? But there are some really, really great teachers out there that are well-meaning, empathetic, and they want to be a mentor, and they have the capacity to be it. But as you say, they just get crunched into this cookie cutter, and all the unique things about them that they could uniquely deliver are not permitted. Just teach this curriculum, just test on, on these metrics, whatever. And I think in the future that we are moving towards, hopefully, teachers will be able to refine their own ability to teach and to educate and to communicate, and people will put together teachers, educational tools and instruments that address all of these concerns that we're having. And maybe in that case, you might be fine to let your kid go to school for 3-4 hours a day, because you'll be so much more confident that they'll be engaged, they'll be getting education that's meaningful to them. The people that are giving it to them won't be injecting agenda or their ideologies, prejudices, biases, all that kind of stuff. And, then maybe it balances off with still some education that you give at home, because there's only some things maybe only your family can provide or know you intimately enough to speak to. That seems likely to be the case, and that would be more efficient. But in an interim period, I mean, I think you're probably an example of people just saying, fuck this shit. Like, we just got to get out of here. Like, maybe the alternative is not a perfect solution yet, but it's definitely better than this garbage.
Yeah, man. And bringing this back to Miami, I met so many plebs like you did. People come up to you, tap you on the shoulder, and you have that initial conversation where you're like, who the fuck are you? Like, because you're a nim on Twitter, like, and you check your phone, it's like, oh, right, that's you. Okay, great. And the biggest feedback I was getting about the pod is like, number one, where the fuck's Lauren? Why didn't you bring her? Because, she's the star of the show. And number two, like, man, when you've opened my eyes to like homeschooling or the state education system, where you've opened my eyes to thinking about this differently, or I will never send my kids to a, because of, the guests that I've had on the show, talking about this in the past. So it's a whole new subject for some people. And that's when you realize that the power of the conditioning. If you never questioned it before, like I hadn't up until 2014, never questioned it, not once. Like, no, of course the kids have
when
to
you
go
were
to
a
school.
kid, did you question it? Like when you were in it?
All the damn time. Like, what the fuck am I doing here? This makes no sense. Like, none. Like, what a fucking waste of time. Or even worse, you're just knuckling down, something's just clicking, you're just getting that, whatever it is. Maybe you're in physics, maybe you're in science, maybe you're in math, maybe you're like deep into something in an English class, and it's just bring. Right, close your books, off to the next lesson. You're like, fuck, that went like 12 minutes. Like, I was into that. I could do this for the rest of the day. Hell, the rest of the week. I got a lot to say about like this, but no. Off, go, walk on the left, no running in the corridor, prefects every 100 yards, like, what the fuck is this? It's prison. Like, it's ridiculous, mate, but it's done with intent.
Do you think, I mean, I'm basically 100% certain that some Bitcoiner or many Bitcoiners probably very soon are going to start attacking this and offering different solutions, be they online, in person, all this kind of stuff. I mean, because I think a lot of people share this view. Is that something that you ever see yourself being more involved in, like projects that seek to reimagine how education is delivered?
Yes, there are a few things going on out there. There's already existing companies. Some plebs might have heard me talk about a company called Galileo. They've just rebranded to Kubrio, Kubrio, just because of trademark infringements. Like, when they started the thing, they called it Galileo. That wasn't a problem. There was like 5 students. Now there's 250 families, and it's growing. And they're like, oh shit, we better change the name before we get taken to court over this. So
Why you
that got,
can't? I guess you
there would
can't
be
use Galileo's name.
no, and there's another 100, websites out there with
Right,
the
right,
same
right.
kind of, So anyway, so that's rebranded and that's decentralized. The kids can choose exactly what they want to learn and interact with. They have different facilitators on there. It's all done via Zoom. There's going to be physical locations popping up around the world soon, which is going to be run by either existing parents or existing micro schools around that just plug into this network. There's a guy down in Madeira who is, him and his wife are absolutely hell bent on building a kind of learning community down there for kids. They've got young kids themselves. They don't want the kids to go to state school. They want to buy some land and they want to set up like a little, not even a school. School's such a, so it's a wrong word for it. Just like learning community, and you go along and you can find the people you need to find to come and put on a week's course, or just even like the local community can run pop-ups, meetups. This is what Bitcoiners do, right? Like this is what we love doing. We love sharing. We love knowledge. So many of us have so many different varied skills. Like Canute could run a month-long sailing course for dads and lads, to go and just immerse yourself in sailing for a month and learn how to do that and learn how to tow the knots and all this kind of stuff, like actual life skills.
Yeah.
Or I mean, Sailor's a huge freaking fan of this, right? This is why he's got sailor.org, and this is why he's trying to distribute free education around the world for as many people as he can possibly reach. And him and Jeff Davidson, who runs that for him, are doing incredible work there. And
Yeah.
they won't stop. They will not stop. Like that he can't. This is a passion of his. And before you know it, there'll be somebody else coming out and doing this. And the idea of Meshtadels is another great concept. I think Bitcoiners plugging into Bitcoin communities that are being built around the world. And I think education will be a huge part of that. Imagine if you could say, like to your kids, right, we're going to go for 3 months to learn about X in this country with a bunch of other like-minded families. Like, okay, let's go and master that skill. And it's going to be, run by
The
Bitcoiners that give a
the
fuck.
the possibilities are endless. That's what's
Yeah.
so exciting about it. It's like you're tasked with the challenge of, like, how do you equip young minds with the requisite knowledge and skills to engage with their environment in order for them to achieve or become what is most meaningful to them. And like that's a pretty big design space, so it could take the shape of so many different forms. And as you said, I mean, like the beef initiative thing in the US right now has become kind of a thing amongst Bitcoiners, right? It would be easy to see how an education initiative could pop up. People start making connections and building networks based on educational initiatives that they want to provide to their kids, be they in certain physical jurisdictions, online trips like the ones you just mentioned. Like those conversations will start happening because more and more people are going to not want to be having their kids brainwashed by the bullshit education system as it exists today.
And Slim's done a great job there, and that started with just education, right? It was educating the ranchers and educating the Bitcoiners, and then those that like fell into one of those groups, or bridged both of those groups, they get attracted to it, and before you know it, you've got a thing. So start a physics initiative, start a math initiative, start, a whatever initiative, like a music initiative. How many musical Bitcoiners are out there? It's like, right, fuck it. I'm going to start a music initiative, and we're going to attract all of these musicians from all over the world, and we're going to come and we're going to jam and we're going to make
Satoshi's men's choir.
Yeah. I think a Barber's quartet would probably, yeah.
It's probably going to happen.
Yeah, and why not? It's all about, again, self-sovereignty and taking charge of your own destiny and the things that you're interested in and what you want to learn and what you want to share. More importantly, it comes back to mentoring. Yeah, and there's
So how do you dictate that for you and yourself? Like, I mean, you touched on it a little bit for the kids, but like,
Mhm.
you're rubbing shoulders with presidents and billionaires and stuff these days, and you're deep into Bitcoin land. Like, what is it that you use to orient how you spend your time and your resources, and what you're trying to engage in the most?
Good question. Whatever pushes Bitcoin adoption forward, it seems to
That's
come
your
back to.
primary
Yeah.
objective.
So without even thinking about it, that just like when I look at like my behavior over the last few years, it's always been that's the base layer. It's like, Dan, why the fuck did you do that? Like, retrospectively thinking about it, like, why did you do? Oh, right, okay, because you just want more people to learn about Bitcoin. So how can you have the most impact in doing that? Like the Bitcoin racing guys, why am I drawn to that? I grew up watching motorsport, and now there's a motorsport team dying to promote Bitcoin to as many people as they can. And they're a family team. They're just mom and dad and two brothers and one of their, a couple of friends driving these cars around, trying to get into the next level so they can reach a bigger audience. And what do they need? They need help. So I'm going to devote my time and my effort into, trying to use what, little presence I have in the Bitcoin space to project a light on them and say, guys, look at what this team is trying to achieve. Who else is out there? Who can help them? Are you a mechanic? Are you a marketing guy? Are you just a pleb? It doesn't matter. Like, who are you? Are you a motorsport fan like me? Look what Pete's doing with the football club, right? This is huge. I know he cops a lot of flack, but the fucker bought a football team. Like, it's amazing. And there's going to be a big Bitcoin meetup there on the first game of the season next weekend. So, what does
You
that
going?
do? No, well, maybe if I'm still stuck in the UK, I don't get this passport issue sorted out, I'll go for sure. And it would be, what are you doing there? Like, there's 1,000 people there that never heard about Bitcoin before. All right, now they're going to hear about Bitcoin. What are the Bitcoin racing guys doing? At the local meetup we had here last weekend, maybe there were 5 to 15,000 people there. I don't know. I don't know how many people the YouTube channel reaches, but the commentator on one of the races said, "Oh, and here goes car 21, right, with the El Salvador flag on the roof." And the reason they're flying that is because El Salvador were the first country to adopt Bitcoin instead of real money. But I guess that's that's a conversation for another day. Like, bam,
All
that
right.
guy, that guy did not contact the team and ask them, why are you carrying the flag? He had to go research it. So, these little touch points. So when I look at, what's driving my behavior, it is, it's to push the message of Bitcoin to as many people as possible. That's why I started the podcast. And that's why, I'll go and shake hands with the president of Madeira and, answer his questions.
How how has the rabbit hole, we've been talking about how Bitcoin in particular seems to ignite, ferocious kind of desire to understand a broad variety of topics and stuff. Has that been the case for you? And if so, what that previously wasn't of that great interest to you has become of keener interest?
Hmm. Yeah, good question. um, I think a love of learning.
You
And
didn't
I
have that
think
before?
no, no, I was just on autopilot. And again, that was a because that's what happens in the state education system.
Mm.
Again, to rag on that again, it cripples that love of learning. It knocks it out of you because you're not allowed it. Like you're told what to learn, and you're told and you're told keep your head down, learn this shit, and you'll get a good job. You're like, oh, okay. So you don't learn. You don't read outside of the curriculum. In fact, you end up leaving school hating reading, hating writing because
Mm.
you're done with it. Like, no, I will never write another 5 fucking thousand word essay in my life. I mean, thank God for Twitter, like 140 characters. Like, yeah, how much wisdom can you put in like that amount of words, and that is a skill in itself. It's completely reignited. I've read more books in the last 4 years than I would have done in, the preceding lifetime, I suppose.
What were some of your favorites?
Books.
Yeah.
Oh, oh my God, who have I
I
got to
know it's
share?
kind of hard to
Yeah,
think
no,
back,
I'm
but
thinking, Andy's going to be pissed if I don't say Why Buy Bitcoin by Andy Edstrom. And I don't even get commission. So
I don't even believe you've read that one. I mean, I certainly haven't read it. I don't really know anybody who has.
I hope you're watching, Andy. Mate, all of them bring something different, right? There's all of Knut's books. I think that is such a special skill as well, to be able to write so succinctly in a language that is not even your native tongue, about a freaking subject so abstract as Bitcoin, and try and portray that message, I think is incredible. So huge kudos to all of the authors out there that have managed to pull that off. As dumb native English speakers, it's almost that to me is a superhuman power.
Well, you wrote a book. I mean, not about Bitcoin, but you know what the
Yeah,
writing process is like, at least.
yeah, hell. So no one enjoys that.
I feel you.
Yeah, I just read a book. It's downstairs. I'm leaving it downstairs, hoping somebody picks it up. It's, and it's called. I'd never heard of this lady. Her name is Victoria Collette Jones, and she's an ex-dentist, UK, trained, and owned her own profession here. And she's written a book called Truth Decay and Why Bitcoin Fixes This.
Really? That's the subtitle?
Yeah. And I met her at the BTC Adventure, which was laid on in an adventure park in the UK at the beginning of July in Bristol, just outside of Bristol. And she gave her this talk, and I was like, what the hell? Where has she come from? Like, it was deep down the rabbit hole stuff. And her book is great. It's very humble. It's well written.
Is Truth Decay like a play on tooth decay as a
Yeah,
dentist? Okay.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I mean, there are so many great books out there.
Wait.
Obviously.
What was, tell me more about this book. That's the other just insane thing. As more and more people tune into Bitcoin, I mean, so many of them become inspired to express what they're learning in some capacity, right? Podcasts, articles, books, art, whatever. And I mean, there's just so much content there now. I mean, we've talked about this before, how like it's just a tsunami of content, which makes it harder to escape. But I just find it awesome that this thing is so inspiring that even people that never thought about writing a book, myself included, to be honest,
I'm looking forward to your
are just
book,
like, just compelled. It's like, got to be done. Not like I know I'm not going to make. Most people are probably operating on the assumption I'm not going to make money out of it. It's not going to be read by that many people. Has to be done, and they go ahead and do it. And I guess, the one you just mentioned came about in that kind of a way. But like, what's the gist of it?
It's a personal story about how she was trying to, move away from practicing within the NHS to starting her own dental practice, to being able to accept Bitcoin payments, and then just falling down the rabbit hole of Bitcoin, and how that shone a light on the whole dental practice and the kind of malpractices that were being pushed within the system, and within especially the NHS system, to the point of having to completely break away from it entirely. It's a good personal story that interweaves all of the Bitcoin narrative, and touches on everything. I think it's a real good beginner's book to pick up. It's very approachable. So yeah, it's and it's not huge. It's like like an easy read, which I think is important. Yeah,
That's awesome.
So how about you? I mean, like, I'm sure we've read a stack of the same stuff.
Yeah, man, I'm reading a lot lately, more than I ever have. And I've always loved reading. Even like school didn't beat it out of me. I would just read other stuff than, what I was supposed to be reading in school. But I mean, the book that I was most impressed and impacted by was Maps of Meaning by Peterson. And I think with all books, you kind of have to separate the content and the wisdom of the book from the author in a certain sense, because it's such a sliver of time and a sliver of their mind. And because, oftentimes, and I only say this because some people dislike Peterson or maybe, who knows what he will become in the eyes of history, let's say. But the book is so different from most of the things that he comments on today, and the way he talks and all that kind of stuff. And of course it's going to be, right, because like stream of consciousness speaking is one thing, but like being meticulous about forming ideas and constructing arguments and that kind of stuff is, you can be a lot more precise. And he was in that book, and it was just incredible. But I'm reading like 8 books right now, just because I get so, depending on my mood, I want to hop around. And to be fair, I don't read a ton of Bitcoin books. So, I mean, off the top, I'm reading On Liberty by John Stuart Mill right now. And I really like how I like his style of writing and communication. It's very kind of like 1800s English, but, he would fit right in on this conversation, right? I mean, his whole thing was, the mass is stupid, and we have to defer to the individual to determine what's right for themselves. And they shouldn't be imposed or coerced away from, engaging in their own free will to determine what is most valuable and what is best for themselves. And that's the way you define not only your intellect, but your moral, character, et cetera, et cetera. I'm reading the Bible and the Quran simultaneously, cover to cover.
Wow.
Yeah. And those are both very interesting.
I couldn't have dropped out on your desk at the age of 14 and said, John, wade yourself through that.
Well, actually, you probably could have. You probably could have. I was into that kind of. I mean, the Bible, I was somewhat resistant to, just because it was part of like the mainstream, and I was always seeking out like obscure sort of stuff. So like I went to Nepal when I was 17, and in Kathmandu, there's all these like, spiritual bookstores, right, with all this stuff on death and Buddhism and Hinduism and meditation and all that shit. And no, I loved all that stuff. I brought a bunch of stuff home with me, but the Bible just seemed like part of the dominant thing, and I was kind of resistant to that. But I've come around a lot on that, and I figured it was time to read it cover to cover, because I've read snippets of it and have even quoted it at times, and I just feel like I need the full context. What else? I mean, lots of obscure stuff that, like papers from 1400 that aren't even formal books, and, that kind of jazz, just to see what people were thinking at the time. But again, I mean, there's not enough hours in the day. There's so much interesting shit to learn, while at the same time, I don't think I'm in danger of this, but I like, it's important to remember that all of that is not just so that you can know and regurgitate. This is what we've been saying the whole time: know and regurgitate the ideas that other people have articulated in the past, but so that you can properly contextualize and create an environment whereby you can generate novel ideas and put them forward based on the novel environment and circumstance that you're in. Because however our environments are similar to Mill in the 1800s, the people who wrote the Bible and 2000 years ago, there are things that are different about our environments now, and that means that different ideas are going to be more or less congruent with what's happening now. And of course, evolution continues to happen culturally and in terms of language and symbolism and all that kind of stuff. And so I I don't think you just want to read so that you can be impressive at the dinner party. You want to read so that you can test your own ideas against those of the past, contextualize them properly, and try to squeeze out something novel, you know,
and connect some of the dots to the now, right? I mean, if you
yeah, exactly.
If you had a room of 10 people and you gave them one paragraph to read and asked them to underline the key points, you'd get completely different, you know, like completely, because that paragraph is going to speak to someone in a completely different manner because of the different lives that you have led up until that point. You know, like you've been on your Amazon expeditions and snorting ayahuasca and doing all of that kind of shit. I haven't done that, right? But we could read the same paragraph, and that's something in that paragraph is going to click with you because of and a different line in that paragraph is going to click, and then we can have a completely different conversation about those specific sentences in which we've underlined. But just memorizing that paragraph to fill in on some test paper or write an essay about it, and have some disinterested examiner who's sitting 1,000 miles away go through it with a red pencil or pen, like that, it's nonsense.
Yeah, totally. And I think the other reason why anytime you write, you end up reading a lot. And I think one of the reasons is not so much just to synthesize a perspective based on that reading, because like I said, you know, the bulk of if you're going to put anything forward in the form of writing, that you are going to operate at least on some kind of presumption that people are going to be interested in reading. I think part of that presumption has to be because you think it's novel or unique in some way. And the only way to do that is to, you know, generate it by yourself and not necessarily synthesize it. But I think a big part of, at least it seems to me, why I've been doing a lot of reading lately is because, and Peterson talks about this a lot, right? Like, you want to make sure that every sentence and every paragraph and every chapter and the book itself and how you communicate generally and who you are and the family you're a part of, it all coheres or clicks in with the broader circumstance, or at least the one that you're trying to address. And I think, you know, reading a variety of different opinions in different time periods in similar subject matter as the one you're addressing helps you figure out the proper way to communicate in a manner that communicates to your audience that you appreciate how their own perspective, the source of their own perspective, and where they may be coming from, such that you can more capably kind of penetrate their perspective and attempt to deliver a new one or a different angle on it. You know, so
random question: how do you read? Everyone has a reading process, right? Is that a weird question? Have you ever been asked that before?
Do you mean like what?
Like,
I use a Kindle to do most of my reading. Is that what you mean?
No, like, do you say, do you try and do like this, like columns either side and speed read? Do you read every single word? Do you go back and read a sentence? Are you highlighting? Are you underlining? Are you sitting up at a desk? Do you need to be in a quiet situation? Are you listening to music?
Right. I don't need to be in any, you know, quiet situation. I read every word, you know, slowly and carefully so that I can get it all. And then I highlight whatever I find meaningful. And the Kindle's actually been great, because before, you know, you highlight with your pen and then you got to take your own notes later. But with the Kindle, you highlight a section and then there's a whole file with all your highlights in them that you can go back and refer to. And it tells you, you know, where in the book they're from and that kind of stuff. So that's been super helpful. And the Kindle is just, I resisted it for ages because I loved physical books, but that was stupid. You know, I got 50 books on, you know, that thing can hold like thousands of books. You can highlight super easily. Battery life for days. It's really easy to read outside. And like I do audiobooks sometimes, but you know, taking notes and underlining is harder in that medium. And if I know it's going to be one that I want to do a lot of that on, I'll read the book. If it's just like a common book that everyone's read and says you need to read, I might do the audiobook, but I still like to read the words. What about you? What kind of reader are you, Dan?
Yeah, good question. I'm trying to refine it because I want to read more. I get FOMO and try to read too quickly and end up having to go back. So I've got to like refine what I'm doing. But I prefer. I've tried the Kindle, but I prefer like actual books. I'd never underlined the books before. I thought that was defacing, like the work. But now I'm voraciously underlining shit and asterisks, and I find that helps me. It helps me stick it in my mind, I suppose. Just that action. Yeah, I need a dead quiet space though. Like I've got to be. I can't be near a device because I know I'll get attracted over here. And it's pretty difficult when you got so many kids running around the place.
Well, sure,
asking things of you. Yeah. So I just yeah, I was just curious because there's I've
People
heard
read in different ways.
Yeah, I've heard different conversations about this, like the best way to get this information into you as quickly and most in a more efficient way. But
yeah,
probably
I
bullshit.
I of course can't relate to the kid distractions yet, but the pull of Twitter I can, and it's gotten to such a point lately that I basically don't use it. I give myself a little scroll in the morning, and then I try to make it so that's it, because you end up asking yourself like, well, what's the best use of my time? And
Yep.
if you really are interested in devoting it to more meaningful pursuits, then it's kind of hard to rationalize, scrolling.
But when you
for
get
several
that
hours a day.
epiphany, do you not just have to tweet it? Like holy
No,
fuck,
man.
really?
No.
I
Well,
can't
because so
stop
many
myself.
of them require a bit of context. It's hard to just like you said earlier, in 240 or 70 words, spit it out. And so and also there's so much like, does everything need to be said? Like as a throwaway tweet, every fucking hour or something like that. Like, I don't know. To each their own, of course. And I still love Twitter, of course, but it just seems like more and more the more appropriate use of time is to devote it to more valuable work, let's say.
Mhm. And the pods, you're still doing the pods. You're doing a great job, man. I'm closing the loop as well.
Well, thank you. As you can tell, these ones are mostly just for me to talk with my homies.
Yeah.
no particular angle. Like it's
No
cool
agenda.
because it's cool because you can kind of use, especially when it all feeds into each other. Like if you are writing something, or if you're engaging in a piece of work of whatever kind, you can get people on the podcast that help you refine your thinking in that regard, and that's kind of a handy way of killing two birds with one stone. But yeah, and the CT pod has been great. It's a bit more formal than this one, and we focus on speaking with people that are building real solutions in the space, and that's been super cool. So yeah, everything is good, despite the crazy clown world that seems to be falling apart all around us. I mean, the song
Well, the sooner it does, the better, right?
No, I
That's the thing.
totally agree. But the song that's been popping into my mind lately is the one that goes, "It's the end of the world as we know it, but I feel fine." There's so many great memes in Bitcoin that like reflect that, right? Like the what's the green toad's name? I'm blanking on it now. Pepe, where Pepe is like on his rollerblades, just like jamming out, like going through the city that's burning to the ground or whatever. I mean, there's a lot of great memes around it, but yeah, we shall see. I mean, maybe we close with a little comment on the macro, but it just seems it seems it's kind of always seemed like at any given moment things could just pop off and get totally crazy. But it does seem like that is becoming more the case all the time now. And even with this like brief COVID reprieve, it's just there's so much stuff happening, and everyone's kind of just thinking like, oh, Powell pivot, fire up the money printer again, and there'll be kind of exuberant or fun times, at least for a little while as a result. But I'm not so sure. I'm sure that's going to happen eventually, but it just there seems to be too many things that are kind of falling apart for us to go back to any sort of familiar time that we might have been used to in the past.
No, exactly, mate. They're going to keep printing. Like this is their game. These are the rules that they know. It's the game that they've devised, and they're going to keep making that top 0.1% even richer. Why
Until, but
wouldn't
yeah,
they
aren't
have the
things
power to
starting
do
to?
it? So
Yeah, sure, but aren't things? There is a breaking point, right? Socially, if not
yeah, but
monetarily.
they don't fucking care. As soon as it breaks, they just go into hyperdrive, right? And that's what you get. That's why you get hyperinflation.
Mm.
That's they will not stop. They just can't, because it becomes they are gonna like self-protect themselves against that as much as possible. And they have the ultimate answer. Just print more cash because it goes in our pockets. And then we just escape the country when it all goes to freaking hell. Like, rinse and repeat. It's been done 1,000 times over.
What are things like in the places that you've been? So the UK, France, like sentiment, prices, turmoil.
Yeah, the prices are ridiculous, but the sentiment is, what are you going to do? The prices go up. My parents have had a lifetime of prices going up. I showed them WTF happened in 1971 the other day. And I'm like, well, why do you think this is? Why do you think this is? Why do you think this is? Why do you, and the answers to each graph, like, nope, 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 nope.
No what? No what?
Like what I was asking, why do you think this? Oh, maybe it's because, it's like,
I see.
the answer is the money's broken, and this is when we come off the gold standards, like officially, like the Nixon rug pull, and look what's happened. All of these graphs, and it's
I
such
love
a
how
powerful tool.
you're still trying to like
Oh yeah,
orange pill or red pill, then orange pill the parents,
yeah.
throwing the WTF happened in 1971 at them and stuff.
But even today, I was walking around one of the local stores here, and there's even teenagers in there walking around still with masks on. Like the psychological damage that's been done to some people is just irreparable. There's still signs up, like the big yellow council signs, like NHS vaccination center this way, and they're still sending out like fourth booster reminder letters to all of the communities, which just blows me away. It's madness. The price of fuel is retarded. All across Europe. I'm sure you've seen the news, and of course, everybody gets tricked into believing it's Putin's price hike, cost of living crisis. All of this it's such an easy narrative, just to sit them down at 10 o'clock and say it's all Putin's fault. Oh yeah, it's all Putin's fault. Fucking Putin. Right, what's the weather? Oh, it's going to be sunny tomorrow. All right, let's go to bed. And it wakes up and it's raining, and people are pissed off and they're fucking angry.
You lied to us about the weather.
Yeah. Mate, all over the world, like most people are, fat and angry, and they don't understand why. I eat my cereal in the morning, I eat my muesli, I eat healthily. It's like, no, you don't. You've been fucking tricked into thinking that is healthy for you, and that is making you sick. And that's giving you diabetes. And, not only that, your kids as well. It's like, well, why don't I have any money? It's because prices are rising out of control because the money's broken. It's really difficult when you realize, as we Bitcoiners do, like the money is broken. That's the answer. Like there it is. Why is this happening? Because the money's broken. Yeah, because the money's broken. And now we have this answer. Another thing here that is going on in the UK. They've been showing live debates between the two prime ministerial candidates. Why the fuck is anyone watching that? You don't have a vote, so it's just literally pure theater. It's bread and circuses.
They don't have a
crack.
vote because the party members choose the leader. Is that what you mean?
Because Johnson was ousted, right?
Yeah.
So now it's just within the party. They're just fighting in
Yeah.
the party. So the party is going to choose, and they already know. So all of this is just pure theater now, and they will just drag this out as long as they can. Why are people watching it if you don't have a vote? It doesn't make sense, right? It just doesn't. So,
Well, I mean, as we've been saying this whole conversation, people's whole life, they've been conditioned to care about things that are irrelevant. And so, what do you expect?
Precisely that, mate. And, look at what's going on in Germany with the fuel crisis that's going on over there. It's a complete disaster. And there's going to be a lot of turmoil, mate, as we go into autumn and winter. And the cost of food is going to start going up. And I just hope people are ready. And I don't think that many people are. So where does it break? Do people take to the streets? That never fixes anything. Ever. And Canada, I mean, what the fuck? What is going on there? Since the truckers convoy and everything, just smashed. Everybody's bank accounts frozen. Nobody in the UK knew that was even going on because it wasn't being reported. The BBC would not report it. They didn't report it for about a week. This was a Commonwealth country.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. So people are they're angry and they can't put their finger on it. And of course, it's just easier to blame whoever's being blamed in the news at the time, or to shine a light on a group of people, like the unvaccinated, for example, and point at them for 3 to 6 months and then move on to the next subset of people. And this is what people are manipulated into doing all the time, and it's just not going to stop. Like this monkeypox bullshit right now, like the WHO coming out and claiming that it's being spread by gay men. Have we been here before? AIDS?
The thing that I was wondering about that, because I think San Francisco declared it a public health emergency, and I'd like to know, and maybe this has been the case, in which case, good, but has the over 100,000 opioid deaths in the US last year, has that been declared a public health emergency? Because as far as I know, with monkeypox, nobody has died. And even if they have, I think it's a relatively small number at this point. But, 100,000 healthy young people dying of drug overdoses and all the different circumstances that precipitate those drugs being available, and and them wanting to take them, and blah blah blah, all that stuff, that seems like a emergency. That's more than a Vietnam War in terms of death toll every single year, as far as the American casualties for the entirety of that war. So that seems like it's notable, but you don't hear a peep.
Nope. Too much money, mate. Too many people making too much money off of those drugs.
Yeah. But look, on a hopeful note, of course, there's still a lot of people that, presuming we're right, which of course we may not be, but we do put a lot of effort into making sure that our perspective is as valid and grounded in truth as possible. Even though there's a lot of people that still fail to see the connections between all this stuff and fail to appreciate the manner in which Bitcoin is a way to isolate or insulate yourself to some degree from what's happening, to achieve greater freedom, broadly speaking. Every day more people trickle in, right? Like that book that you mentioned, Truth Decay, like what's her network? A few hundred people, her former patients, her community, that kind of stuff. They read it. It's a data point. Everyone who writes an article, does a podcast, writes a book, does a speech, hosts a conference, hosts a meetup, does a beef initiative. Like every day there's people trickling in and trickling in and trickling in. And that's the only way this can happen. Back to how we opened this up. Like it can't happen by just, if Biden got on the horn tomorrow and said, you know what, I'm doing an about face. We fucked this all up. Bitcoin is the way that we fix this, fiat, we're going to abolish the Fed and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure some people would be happy about it, but that wouldn't be the solution, because the people who would be exposed to that measure would have no idea why, or why it's valuable, or how to engage it. This is an individual revolution. And so it's going to happen perhaps on a slower time scale than we're used to things happening, because in a centralized system, you say, hey, this is the law now, and everyone has to conform. And that's a relatively speedy process. But when it takes every individual changing their perspective and changing their preferences and changing their behavior, that takes time. But more and more every day, right? Which is why, and we have a unique perspective on this, because we kind of have a front row seat to seeing the personalities that pop up and getting to communicate with them, and seeing what's happening broadly in the industry. And it's what could be more encouraging, because it isn't just like a temporary or a facade of change. Like, we're seeing really fundamental changes on an individual level on how these people are ultimately what they're choosing to value, the lives they're pursuing, the relationships they're building, all this kind of stuff. And it's really, really, really positive and good from my perspective. And the fact that more people are getting exposed to the potential of that every single day, I mean, that's a tremendous reason for hope. Of course, we'd like it to happen faster, but it's, this is part of the reason why I say it's the end of the world as we know it. And I feel fine because this is happening, and maybe it couldn't happen any faster, right? Maybe there's, who knows what kind of forces are really at play, but
yeah, you've gone
lots to be optimistic about, I guess, is what I'll say.
I don't know whether it's just my earphones, but you've gone a little robotic. So if you need to fiddle a wire, then just give it a little fiddle.
Well, maybe that's our cue.
It could be our cue, but I just want to push home what you're saying. A lot of fiat idiots out there will start smashing the freaking tweets out as soon as the price of Bitcoin tanks. They all come rushing out. Rubini, Taleb, whoever told you so. Like, they're focusing on the wrong thing. Like, don't focus on the price. You're right. Focus on the people that are joining the network each day. And that number goes up every single day. That number will not go down. It just will not. So the more people every day that join this network, which is inevitable, it's only going one way, because there's only 21 million, and we all know the issuance schedule, and there's the 2-week difficulty adjustment. The whole thing's freaking amazing. Put a fucking pin in it, John. It's been an amazing rip, and it's great to hang out with you, brother. I appreciate you asking me on.
Yeah, brother. It's always great to chat. Like I said, I felt we hadn't caught up in a while. I don't want to do this, but I will let you get back to your family now. 2 hours. So keep up the great work. Keep up the great work, of course, and keep convincing heads of state, other fancy important merits of Bitcoin. And I'm sure I'll be talking again soon.
I'll do my best, brother. Thanks for everything you do. Appreciate you, man. Take care.
All right, brother. See you. All right, brother.